A very good morning. A very good morning to you all, and welcome. Welcome to this week's CASO webinar on non-governmental, also referred to as non-profit organizations. I am Apofia Muhimbura from Uganda Biodiversity Fund, a non-profit trust fund that supports biodiversity conservation in Uganda. I am very privileged to moderate the discussions today. Thank you for making time to join us. To join the conversation this morning, we have a very distinguished panel who will lead us in discussing our topic for the day. Before I introduce them, and before we move into our discussions for the day, allow me to welcome Oxide Isaac Tumzime, a CASO intercessor, to lead us in prayer, after which I will invite Dr. Magara, the chairman of the CASO Board of Directors, to give us opening remarks. Welcome, Oxide Isaac, to lead us in opening prayer.
Let's humble ourselves and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity, O Lord, to have this discussion on yet another webinar, especially this for non-government organizations. We are reminded all of the Samaritan who saved one of the Jews who in his position shouldn't have. And we are reminded that NGOs have a special place in your heart because they reach out to the least of these and provide help where others could not. And because of that, Lord, we are grateful for this opportunity to discuss the opportunities, oh Lord, in here, to expand the NGOs' reach and also to make their work better. We thank you for the panelists. We ask that you will give them wisdom as they discuss. And we pray that, Lord, this session will go well. We pray for the airwaves that they will hold and that all the panelists will be heard loud and clear. And at the end of the session, oh Lord, those who have attended will walk away enlightened and better acquainted with NGOs, and that, Lord, this webinar will be to the glory of your name. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name I prayed, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Isaac. Welcome once again to this webinar on NGOs and non-profit organizations. If you look at the bottom of your screen where the menus are, on your screens, they could be at the top or on the sides, depending on the type of gadget that you have. You will see a button for Q&A. We encourage you to interact and participate in the discussions today by typing your comments or questions in the Q&A chat room. Not the one labeled chat, but the one labeled Q&A. The panelists will be interacting with you by responding to your questions or to your comments. Then every 30 minutes or so, we will have a poll question. It will pop up on your screen and you'll have an opportunity to answer it by selecting the option that most speaks to your opinion. We encourage you to participate in the poll. Please follow us on Twitter by using our hashtags and also retweeting. Our hashtags for the webinar today are #CasoWebinar and #ThriveNGO. The Thrive NGO comes from the fact that the webinar we have held here at CASO for this year are called the Thrive series. Thrive in the sense that COVID-19, though it is a pandemic that has struck us, has also presented us with different opportunities to thrive. If you look carefully, you will find opportunities to thrive. So today's tag is #ThriveNGO. Please tweet and retweet and invite your friends to do the same. We are also broadcasting live on CASO's Facebook page. You can engage from there. But before we proceed any further, allow me to invite OCSID Dr. James Magara, the Chairman, CASO Board of Directors, to give his opening remarks. Dr. Magara, you are welcome to address the forum.
Thank you very much, Apofia, and very good morning to all of you. Very, very special welcome to our guests this morning, the panelists. Thank you for making time. You will be formally introduced. Thank you for making time to join us as we think and talk about the role that NGOs and nonprofits play in our society. Also, thank you, a special welcome rather to our attendees as well, the participants. Welcome. Thank you for choosing to spend your Saturday morning in this way. This particular webinar is the 25th in a series that have been running since the first part of this year. When the pandemic struck, when lockdown was instituted, we opted to look at the opportunities, and there have been many, many opportunities that this upheaval has brought to us. And we held a workshop in the month of April, brought together membership of our think tank and divide ourselves in different sectors just to think about what are the possible opportunities that can come out of this very, very unprecedented lockdown in peacetime. We've had lockdowns during war, but this is a lockdown that happened in peacetime, and the scope was all over the world. So brainstorming sessions took place, ideas were gleaned, documents have been written, and this is the next stage of what we've been doing, and that is to present ideas to experts, but also to invite the panel, the public rather, to take part in discussions. There's still another phase that will unfold. Most of it will unfold in the first half of next year rather, as we finalize on all the documents and begin to engage more directly with the different sectors. But you're part of this process, and we're very glad to welcome you and to host you this morning. And as we usually say, let's open up our minds, let's put on our thinking caps, and let's see what we can contribute to the improvement of our country. I'm wishing you all a very, very fruitful discussion period this morning. We look forward to hearing from you all. Have a great webinar. Thank you. Apofia, back to you.
Thank you very much, Oxide Magara. We appreciate your warm welcoming words and the background about CASO, where we are coming from and where we are going as a think tank. Thank you very much. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to cross-sectoral disruptions across the world that did not spare the NGOs and Npos. The pandemic exponentially increased the demand for certain services like food relief for the vulnerable and other services, and yet measures like the lockdown and restrictions on who could administer relief tied the hands of many sector players in this area of service. The crisis revealed the heavy lifting that NGOs and NPOs do on a daily basis and highlighted the role that they play in our society. With the imposition of lockdown, NGOs and NPOs suddenly faced the reality of working remotely with limited resources. This period has given such organizations an opportunity to rethink processes and procedures. CASO is contributing to the national efforts of dealing with COVID-19 by creating this platform where we can all make observations and recommendations to strengthen governance in our country. So this webinar will focus on the impact of COVID-19 on NGOs and NPOs, helping us to understand the strengths, new demands, and latent opportunities that can be leveraged in order to strengthen this sector during and beyond the pandemic. Out of our discussions today, we hope to be able to develop a paper that can be presented to decision makers in this sector to help influence a future outlook. Therefore, your input is critical. I encourage you once again to participate by typing your questions and comments in the Q&A space at the bottom of your screen or to the side of your screen, depending on your gadget, and to also take part in the poll, because we will have poll questions popping up every 30 minutes, and we encourage you to express your opinion when the question comes up. Once again, we welcome you all today to the webinar focusing on NGOs and NPOs. We have a very distinguished list of panelists this morning, and I will introduce them to you in no particular order of importance. We have Mrs. Priscilla Mirembe Seruka. She is the Managing Director and Team Leader at Kairos Consult. We have Mr. John Osapiri, who is the CEO, Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. We have Mrs. Jacqueline Asimwe, who is the CEO, Civisource Africa. And we have Mrs. Angelina M. Twinomujuni, who is the Program Monitoring Officer at ERIC's Development Partner. All our panelists will be fully introduced to you as they come up to address this forum. We will get the poll questions 30 minutes, every 30 minutes. And in these polls, the panelists are not allowed to vote, but only the participants. Our hashtags for the webinar today, once again, are #CASOWebinar and #ThriveNGO. You are requested to post your questions in the Q&A chat room and not the chat, the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screens, and the panelists will respond to the questions there. To start us off in the discussion today is the CASO presenter, Oxide Angelina Twinomujuni. She's presenting the think piece on opportunities presented by COVID-19 for the non-governmental and non-profit organizations. Angelina has been involved in non-governmental organizations and NPOs for over 15 years. She's passionate about leadership, transformation, empowerment of communities. Angelina has over 8 years of experience in international development where she has contributed to a number of project interventions through communication, program monitoring, and evaluation. She has over 15 years of national and international development experience gained through a number of positions. She is now employed at ERIC's development partner as a program monitoring officer and is currently involved in the vetting and management of grantees under the ERIC's development partner portfolio in East Africa. ERIC's development partner is a child rights organization working in 17 countries with a mission to reduce poverty and vulnerability by promoting the rights of the child. Angelina is into real estate business as well, where she's part of Novelty Shelters, which is an investment group involved in the development of affordable and innovative, cost-effective housing for middle-income earners. Some enterprises have been successful, she says. Others have been painful learning experiences, which have strengthened her resolve to succeed in her entrepreneurial journey. One of her inspirational quotes is drawn from the words of Biz Stone, co-founder of Twitter, who said, "Timing, perseverance, and 10 years of trying will eventually make you look like an overnight success." I don't know how far Angelina has gone, whether the 10 years are over for her to look like an overnight success. But also Angelina loves baking, cooking, and reading, and is extremely curious and fun-loving. She is also an author, best known for her leadership devotional titled Conversations on Leadership for Young People. Angelina holds a BA in Development Studies and a Master's in Peace and Conflict Studies from Makerere University, along with other professional certifications in communication, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. She has served on several governing bodies of NGOs and is currently serving on the Oxid Alumni Council in the position of secretary. We welcome you, Oxid Angelina, to deliver the Castle Think Piece on NGOs and NPOs. I can think of no one else qualified to do that. Welcome, Angelina.
Thank you, Apophia, for that colorful tribute. I appreciate it. It gives me great joy to be able to discuss this topic. And like Apophia mentioned, NGOs have really gone through a great disruption in this season. And I'm here just to talk about that disruption. I just think about our own organization. We had wonderful plans. We always have amazing plans at the beginning of the year, but all these were thrown out this particular year. So I look forward to discussing these disruptions that did not spare NGOs, and look forward to what we can agree on together as we go through our deliberations. I'll briefly go into our background by saying that, the idea of NGOs, and for those who may not know, NGOs are non-governmental organizations or non-profits in Uganda, date back as far as the pre-colonial period. This is seen in the way that communities in Uganda mobilized themselves for collective benefit. One of the organizations in those days was called Muno Mukabi, which loosely translated means a friend in need is a friend indeed. Another association was called Wantik, which actually means workplace. There's one that I deleted, which was called Bataka Tweziche, which actually means that members of the community, let's bury each other. Of course, we cannot delete history, but we need to acknowledge it. So we realized that these associations are really not new and were present in our society even before the coming of the colonialists. Now, with the coming of the colonialists, the activities of such community organizations changed drastically. Different groups and organizations like political parties evolved to resist colonial rule and demand for better prices for agricultural produce. And such resistance led to the introduction of greater African participation and promotion of agricultural cooperatives by the government. And this gave birth to some organizations like the Young Men of Uganda, the Uganda African Welfare Association. And we noticed that between the period 1888 to 1962, there was a birth of the civil rights championing organizations. And this gave birth to an organization like the Uganda Council of Women, which was formed by middle-class women to rally behind women's rights, to participate in national politics in the nation. The pre-independence period also witnessed the arrival of international NGOs, sometimes called charitable organizations, and most of these were religious-based. They included organizations like the Salvation Army in 1931, the Young Women Christian Association in 1952, the Young Men Christian Association in 1959, and these created a shift in the way that NGOs were working because they got involved in welfare promotion and were critical in filling in the gap that was left by the government. Now, between 1971 and 1979 in Uganda, this was a period characterized by dictatorship and suppression of freedoms, including the freedom to associate. And this created a change. What happened is most of the international NGOs were not able to thrive in this environment. As a result, faith-based organizations were the only ones which were able to persist in their work in the nation. And these continued to provide education and health, which were crucial services during this period. Now, we come to the period of 1986 to 1996, and this has been known in Uganda as the NGO decade. During this period, we noticed that the NGO sector grew exponentially, both in number and activity. NGOs developed various forms and were able to provide services. And this period was characterized by a period where funding was project-based. So from the fairly modest numbers prior to 1986, this sector has grown dramatically to over 350 active international NGOs. And as of 3rd August 2020, Uganda has 2,388 registered organizations. In the past, there was not enough reliable data, but we see this changing with the regulatory framework that is actually in place. It's important to discuss the regulatory framework under which NGOs operate. The activities of NGOs are supervised by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, specifically the National Bureau for NGOs, and this was known as the NGO Board. It's the regulatory entity mandated to monitor, regulate, and coordinate the activities of NGOs in Uganda, and this bureau maintains an updated register. However, I noted something funny on the register, which I would like us to discuss today. Maybe our panelists will pick it up. There is an interesting phrase on the updated register, which states that the updated register shall vary at the discretion of the NGO Bureau. When we talk about NGOs and non-profit organizations, it's really important to also highlight some of the trends. And some of these trends have been researched on by a number of researchers. One of them is the National Intelligence Council of 2012, and the Oxford Martin Commission of 2013, and the World Economic Forum of 2013, which have tried to examine the potential threads. They call them global trends and mega trends. And they highlight some of the trends that are affecting the way NGOs and nonprofits operate. And some of these trends include climate change, resource insecurity, demographic shifts, social mobility, migration, economic inequalities, social activism, and the role of the civil society, changing geopolitical dynamics, and the impact of new technologies and greater interconnectivity through the web. NGOs are no longer operating in isolation. We are beginning to operate within a global environment, and this is having an effect on us. Now, while these are global trends, we need to discuss the specific trends, the trends that we see in our nation, Uganda. And one of the first trends that I would like to discuss is the shrinking NGO space as a result of increased government intervention. And I'll refer to an article written in one of our dailies on Tuesday, November 14th. It was written in the Monitor newspaper, and it was entitled, "Government Closes 12,000 NGOs." It reported, addressing journalists at the Uganda Media Center in Kampala yesterday, State Minister for Internal Affairs Obiga Kania said only 2,119 NGOs of the registered 14,027 NGOs were validated. This meant that over 11,000 NGOs were not validated. However, Mr. Okello, the executive officer of the National NGO Bureau, clarified that other NGOs would be validated later because some of them had not been validated for a number of reasons. So while the validation of NGOs is a step in the right direction, it's great to validate NGOs. There is a possibility that the existence of some organizations will be threatened. Some organizations may be validated very well, maybe because they are doing that which is pleasing, and others may not be validated, maybe because they are a bit critical of the government. And we will not forget what happened in 2017. And this was also reported in our dailies. You can, it's okay to go and check. The Ugandan authorities closed down bank accounts of Action Aid Uganda, preventing the organization from doing its work of tracking poverty and injustice. And the authority later sent a letter to 25 other non-government organizations. Thankfully, the organizations that I have represented were not part of this, but there are those organizations that are threatened. Another trend that we should not ignore is the evolving funding trend. The way funding was distributed in the past is not the way funding is distributed now. And we realize that international NGOs are now competing with local NGOs, and the opportunities are becoming less and less for our local NGOs as a result of weak systems and financial controls, governance challenges. So many times international NGOs outcompete us. We should not forget that we are no longer operating in isolation, forgive me. We are operating within a global policy environment. This is as a result of increasing incident and impact of disasters that are outpacing the capacity of international humanitarian actors. There is a need to focus on strengthening local actors. We also need to know that intervention trends have changed. What used to be supported in the past may not be what is supported now. So some NGOs are involved in multi-sectoral activities, others are thematic, and others are getting involved in macro policy, advocacy, human rights, civil rights, integrity, accountability, and governance. Corruption. The NGO sector has not been spared. Some NGOs have really struggled with corruption for a very long time, and some very good and credible organizations have had to close because of corruption. Getting licenses and approvals to operate, accountability issues, and even monitoring and evaluation activities have shown that some interventions have not happened, yet they have been fraudulently reported about. It's possible to go to a site, you have given money, and the work has not been done. And this is a bad trend. We cannot ignore this. Of course, as clearly highlighted above, political interference. Political interference is critical. Some NGOs might be dealing with advocacy issues, which make them a target for the current regime. The impact of COVID-19 was something else altogether. And we really need to discuss this because it's something that we did not plan for when we were planning for our activities. We did not see it coming. In my organization, we make annual plans, and we generally stick to these plans. But this year, the annual plan that we had struggled to make in 2019 was obsolete. We did not have monitoring visits. We could not carry out the capacity development activities. And we saw this across the board with many other organizations. For example, when schools were closed, we could not operate. And while some NGOs were able to adapt, others made the decision to buckle up until the storm was over. And this meant that offices were closed, staff were sent on leave, and project activities were suspended. So it's important that we don't just discuss this from a point of what has been thrown at us, but use this experience to identify the gaps that have been exposed as a result of this challenge. As a result of the pandemic, there are things that came to the fore for non-governmental organizations and nonprofits. And one of the things that came forward was that we had weaknesses in some of our processes and systems of operation. We were not agile enough. Our processes and systems could not easily be deployed to address the rapidly changing context. I know some organizations that had to seek for approval from abroad, and when approval came, the emergency had passed. We realized that we were over-relying on physical interventions, that if we were not in a place, something would not be done. For example, for me, in my role as a monitoring officer, I need to go and monitor interventions across the region. We realized that we did not have a monitoring system that could be an online monitoring system that could immediately be deployed. Monitoring relied on my physical presence. There was also a gap in the availability of health personnel in communities. This is because if our program was thematically education, health was not something that we thought about. We usually used the referral system. Some NGOs and nonprofits realized that they had over-relied on funding from abroad, and this funding was immediately affected, especially where it came from philanthropies or individual donors. However, the flip side of this was that some organizations were able to reallocate funding for emergencies. Of course, we know very well that NGOs and nonprofits were not characterized as essential services during the height of the pandemic. So in some cases, even when we were not able to access those who desperately needed the intervention. The available funding for some NGOs was restricted and could not immediately be deployed to emergency response. In some cases, even when NGOs were allowed to reallocate funding, some NGOs refused to reallocate because they were not sure that the funding would be available at the end of the pandemic. And then we have this big elephant, fragmentation of our sector. We were not coordinated. Some NGOs had resources and could immediately access beneficiaries or could not access the beneficiaries. Others had access, but they did not have the resources. So what challenges have we seen emerging as a result of these gaps? We saw that lockdown caused limited movement. We realized that we were concentrated in specific vulnerable communities and not others. At the beginning of the pandemic, it's the urban centers that needed support. We realized that our systems were not nimble enough to handle the rapidly changing context. And in some cases, we experienced financial loss and could not keep some of our staff. But you know, every cloud has a silver lining, and there are some opportunities that have come forward as a result of this pandemic. And the opportunities that have come forth include some of these that I'll highlight quickly. Mindset change. We have realized that we need to change the way we address funding. The closed borders increased our vulnerability and enabled us to understand that local philanthropy is the way to go. I will not elaborate this. We have a distinguished panelist who will talk about local philanthropy, but we cannot always depend on funding from abroad. And then this season also gave us some breathing space. It gave us time to strengthen our systems and policies and structures. It gave us time to evaluate our visions and missions, to understand whether what we are doing is actually significant. And of course, for those who were accustomed to monitoring visits, these were no longer held. So this gave us time to breathe. Some NGOs, I'll refer to one network, the Crane Network, was able to support the government in public health education through their Hope Studio. Now, a number of NGOs realized they could not meet the challenges alone, so they opted to work within consortia. And this opportunity gave NGOs an opportunity to diversify their scope of services beyond their traditional coverage. It was an opportunity to grow and go into areas that are not familiar. So as a think tank, we came up with a number of recommendations that I would like to share with you today, just to get us thinking. Yes, this challenge has been thrown at us, but what recommendations can we take up as the NGO and nonprofit sector? The first recommendation is that NGOs and nonprofits will need to identify funding from diverse sources and local fundraising in order to increase sustainability. This is critical. The most painful thing for me has been having to visit a nonprofit or NGO that the organization has been supporting for a number of years, and I am communicating that funding will no longer be able to come in from this particular source. I have seen a number of organizations closing when funding does not come. We need to focus more on our abilities, what we have, what we can do for each other, local fundraising, corporate social responsibility, volunteering, resource mobilization, and focus on local philanthropy. We have the resources. Is there something that we can do to support each other? We need to explore creative and innovative approaches to working, offline and online working, affordable IT solutions, multimedia, and getting new skill sets which can be acquired, particularly in this season. I have been able to continue working by working remotely, and we have had to learn some new skills. We have become proficient in Zoom, Teams, and other communication mechanisms. So we need to explore creative approaches. This is a time that NGOs need to strengthen their governance structures and systems in order to be more competitive. And I will not elaborate that point further. Another recommendation would be self-reflection. We need to use this time not to react, but to prepare ourselves for what may be coming in the future, which we do not know. We need to analyze the trends, define our visions and missions, focus on the areas where we excel. There are areas where you will excel as a non-governmental organization or non-profit. Focus on that. A beautiful teapot will never be able to fry an egg successfully. So don't try to fry an egg if you're a teapot as an NGO. And finally, collaboration. If we are to benefit from institutional funding, we'll need to explore avenues through which we can complement each other. We don't need to compete. We can complement each other. And this could include joining networks and platforms so that we can have a stronger voice. The days of the lone walker are over. This business of thinking you're going to make it on your own, that time is over for non-government organizations and non-profits. So as I conclude, allow me to present the cause that NGOs are rapidly evolving, and we must be aware of that. It's critical for us to develop appropriate organization capabilities to handle that change. It's important to reposition ourselves for effectiveness within our areas of intervention. In order to do this, we'll need to have a change in mindset. We need to adapt and adopt unfamiliar skill sets. We need to develop relationships across a diverse array of partnerships. And we need to define ourselves critically, identify a hedgehog or area of expertise where we can operate better than anyone else in order to be able to address the emerging development challenges. Thank you for listening. I'll look forward to questions or additions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oxide Angelina, for that informative, elaborate, and clear presentation. You have put on table a few recommendations and highlighted a few challenges, issues that need to be addressed in relation to COVID-19 and the NGO sector. I'm sure our esteemed panelists will be able to weigh in on those matters that you have presented. But before we call on our first panelist to get a response to what Oxide Angelina has presented to us, let me call for our first poll question. Let's have our first poll question, please. And I want to encourage us to respond to the poll question, and also to go to the Q&A section and put in our comments. The panelists, there are already some comments there. I encourage you to go and engage. Now, the poll question is, how would you rate the contribution non-governmental organizations and non-profits are making in the communities in which they operate? 1, they make a difference in the communities. They are doing more than government does. 2, they do not influence communities significantly. Government is the main provider. 3, the work of NGOs and government is complementary. You're already coming in. I'll give it a few more seconds to run. Please express your opinion about our NGOs and NPOs and how they're influencing our communities. Are they operating well or are they not? A few more seconds to go. You could also express your opinion in the Q&A section. Okay, we are ending the poll just about now. And most of you think that the work of NGOs and government is complementary, that they are both needed. And some of you, about 14%, think they make a difference in the communities. They are doing something more than government does. Thank you very much. 86% of you think the work of NGOs and government is complementary. So we take that. Thank you very much for your participation. We will go on. Let me invite our first panelist. Thank you for responding to the poll. Although the poll is not a very scientific way to do research, your responses give us a general feel of what the population may be thinking about the area that we are discussing on. Our technical team, could you get the poll off the screen? I'm clicking and it's not going. Meanwhile, let me call upon our first respondent, our first discussant, Mrs. Priscilla Mirembe Seruka. Mrs. Seruka is an experienced leader and manager. For 15 years, she supervised the operations of an international NGO intervening in 5 countries. She has strong leadership and communication skills, is an effective team builder with experience in leading a dynamic results-based international organization. She has 21 years experience in effective funds management. Priscilla has a track record of delivering results while upholding the value of integrity. She is an astute negotiator in multicultural settings, is hardworking, strategic, dependable, and resourceful. She has 22 years experience in microfinance work at different levels, ranging from oversight, accounting, management, and credit. And prior to this is 8 years experience in banking and over 18 years experience in successful organizational management, development, and leadership. She has extensive experience in board development programs, developing staff teams, working with integrated programs, aligning and putting in place policies and procedures in weak or failed credit programs. She has 16 years experience in putting in place, developing and leading a multicultural board. And Priscilla is a successful resource mobilizer who has written successful proposals to many different donors, including NORAD, EU, UNDP, DFID, and many others. She is currently managing director at Kairos Consult, a consultancy firm specializing in governance, program management, and inclusive finance. She is a proud Gayaza High School product and holds a bachelor's degree in agriculture, specializing in agriculture economics, and a master's degree in management studies. She is a mother to 4 men and wife to Dr. David Seruka for over 31 years. She is a strong believer and follower of Jesus Christ. She is involved in farming and enjoys mentoring young ladies and preparing young couples for marriage. With that background, with that experience, I am sure you will welcome with me Mrs. Seruka to speak to us. Welcome, Oxide Priscilla respond to the think piece presented by Angelina. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And good morning, all our listeners. It's a joy to be here, a part of this discussion on NGOs. I really loved my work in the NGO world for over 15 years. And this pandemic has brought to light so many things of how NGOs, we need to rethink ourselves and to make us more effective. Some of the issues that have come up with the NGOs is that lack of making decisions quickly, waiting for somebody abroad to make decisions for you, meaning that capacity, local capacity on the ground has not been there. NGOs which have had strong local capacity have been able to reinvent themselves and move on during this COVID era. So one critique I would really want to make with NGOs today is how strong is your capacity on the ground? Are decisions made abroad, or do you have people who can make decisions today? I know some few NGOs, and even one where I used to work, Strome Foundation, for many years. They were able to reinvent themselves in so many ways, to the extent that they have even trained local people in the communities on how to go on Zoom, on how to use Teams, especially where there was a smartphone, or in some cases, even providing the phones for the people in the community so that they could engage with community people, train local community volunteers to be able to do the work which people could not do by going there physically to monitor. So there's a need for leadership which can quickly reinvent itself and move on in periods like this. Another issue that has come up is also a number of NGOs not having business continuity plans or disaster plans. I think we thought business would continue as normal, but it is one of the key policies that needs to be in any organization now: a disaster policy, a business continuity plan. In case disaster strikes, what should we do? We need to think ahead, being able to think ahead in such times. One of the challenges also that has come up in the gaps is that even when NGOs have wanted to connect with people in the local communities where they can't go, you find that internet is not everywhere. It mainly reaches in the bigger towns, in the rural areas, and in the more remote areas, the internet is not spread. So as a challenge, perhaps, or recommendation to ensure that we can have internet connectivity in the more remote areas so that it is easy to continue with work in those rural areas. Of course, as our presenter shared, the change in mindset concerning funding. NGOs get a lot of funds from donors, and we have been depending on donors which come from outside. We do get a lot of funds from and donations from say banks who may be engaged in corporate social responsibility and other corporates of the kind. But there is a need now to create NGOs today in Uganda, philanthropy NGOs, which mobilize funds from our local resources. We did see a very good picture when the government requested for support during the COVID era, and we saw billions of money coming in. We saw even vehicles of all kinds coming in, a lot of food coming in. And really it opened our eyes to see there's a lot of money within even Uganda, which we have not yet tapped. So the challenge is for us to create such funds which gather funds and are able to channel this money to the real needs in our country. Of course, I know from the experience of what happened there is need for that money to be used well in a very good way so that we are accountable and transparent in the use of money. We need to have a mindset that we do not only invest money in where we benefit financially, but also investing money in helping some other disadvantaged people. So yes, there's a need to change, but also I think many times people fear to put money if they know accountability will not be good. So if we are to develop local donors in our nation, there is a need for people of integrity and accountability, so that people feel safe that they are giving money and it will serve the purpose for which it is being given. The other challenges in NGO is a reducing space of our NGOs, as Angelina has said. NGOs do not only do community work or community mobilization, making sure communities develop, but also they have a big role in advocacy, because poverty is created because of a lot of social injustices. So there's a need for space for NGOs who will advocate for the rights of people who are being stepped upon, people who will advocate for why we are continuing to see poverty in a nation like ours, yet it could have been solved. So there's a need for government to open up more space for NGOs to involve in advocacy. Today, what is happening is that NGOs fear to go into advocacy in case they get a challenge to renew their license. But in that way, if NGOs fear to become the voice of the vulnerable, then they are failing the masses. They are failing the vulnerable people. And that is a space, a conversation that government needs to understand, that advocacy is part of NGO work, because NGOs are the voice of the vulnerable. Working together is another issue with NGOs. I remember many times in trying to go in meetings where NGOs have been called, say the NGO forum. You will find many times in these forums, they are the local small NGOs who don't have a big voice, and very few of the bigger NGOs, meaning that the bigger NGOs felt they can handle their own things. They have their own budgets, they have their own money, and they don't need a lot to work with others. I think this needs to change. Even bigger NGOs need to take up smaller NGOs to empower them and work with them alongside them. And this season has shown the need to work together, the need to be able to coordinate, the need to be able to ensure that we do not duplicate work in the same areas. You find NGOs tend to work in few spaces and other areas do not have any NGOs. A case in space is like in Gulu. There's a time you'd find every NGO is in Gulu town. Yet other districts neighboring Gulu, like Noya, you hardly find any NGO working there. So there is a need to ensure that we can reach even those underserved districts, and also learn to work together and share information together. This is, I think, mainly true for the bigger and more stronger NGOs. The other issue also about the donations we have been used to in NGOs coming from abroad. Nowadays, they come with a lot of strings tied to them, especially things like the LGBT agenda. I have been trying to mobilize resources for a certain local NGO. And I was connected to a certain site where they always post people funds which are available. But I remember that last year, a lot of money last year, you'd think, this is it. And then at the end of it, they want to show you how you work with those LGBT people. It would be given sometimes not as direct as I'm putting it, but it is implied, and that is the only way you will be considered. So we really need to look into our own resources to get funds which do not have strings attached to them. A lot of NGOs have also been used to working with a top-down approach. What has come out very well in this COVID area is the need to have local leaders or local volunteers on the ground who are empowered and can do monitoring on behalf of the NGOs. So we need to use the bottom-up approach a lot, the community-led approaches, where they can come up with people who can monitor, who can train them, who can empower them. Gone are the days of the top-down approach and the need for the community-led initiatives. And we need to embrace a lot the digitalization in so many ways. For example, in some of the communities, I know there were a lot of good government programs being aired on radios and televisions, but the poor schools in the local communities could not access them. I know one NGO which was able to give solar radios to schools in poor communities, so that they're able to join in the learning that has been going on. So
yes,
there is,
yes, indeed.
So there is a need to shift in the way we work, and also a need to see that government can reduce on the restrictions in NGOs to be able to do advocacy. The need to ensure internet is spread wide in different communities. So there are a lot of opportunities that have come up, and I will stop here for now. I will continue in my next opportunity to say something. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oxide Priscilla, for that very well thought out critique and additions to the think piece. Indeed, our NGOs need to plan and look ahead. Before we go to the next panelist, let me call for the second poll questions. Second poll question, please. And I encourage the panelists, please go to the Q&A and respond to the comments that have been put there. Our second question is, what do you consider to be the greatest hindrance to the growth of NGOs and NPOs in Uganda? What do you consider to be the greatest hindrance to the growth of NGOs and NPOs in Uganda? Is it a harsh regulatory environment? Is it changing donor priorities or policies which affect NGOs significantly? Is it over-reliance on donor aid? Is it weak governance structures, policies, and systems? Or is it founder mentality? Those who start them do not want to leave them, they stick there. What is it that hinders the growth of our NGOs and our NPOs? Please express your opinion and continue putting your comments in the Q&A. Our panelists go there and respond. We are doing well. I encourage all the participants, apart from the panelists, to take part in this opinion poll. Less than 50% of you have voted. Please vote. So far, we have a few seconds to go, but let's express our opinions on this. And also, we encourage you to tweet about this webinar. Use your Twitter account to tell others about us. Our hashtag is #CASO webinar and Thrive NGO. Thrive NGO. About 58% of you have voted, and we are doing okay. We can end the poll just about now. Most of you think that there is over-reliance on donor aid, 44% of you. And next, changing donor priorities, have affected significantly, that's 22%. And next is a weak governance structure. 19% of us think that weak governance structures, policies and systems are affecting us. And then 7% tie at thinking that it's a harsh regulatory environment and a founder mentality. Thank you very much for taking part in the poll. We can stop sharing now. And we move on to our next panelist. I take the pleasure now to invite Mr. John Osapiri as our second panelist. John is the Chief Executive Officer of Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity, a Christian lawyers membership non-governmental organization, a legal aid service provider and rights organization. He is a seasoned Christian lawyer, researcher, academician, author, and apostle and evangelist. John is passionate about the marketplace ministry, empowering church leaders, raising leaders, Christian evangelism, and regional integration law. He has worked with the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the laws, processes, and procedures on land acquisition, administration, management, and registration in Uganda as a consultant in research and mediation. He is the National Coordinator of Zoe Life Theological College USA in Uganda and Lecturer of Law at Nkumba University. He is a founder member of the Tanzanian Christian Lawyers Fraternity, Destiny for Kids Uganda, Everlasting Hope Uganda, International Ministers Platform Uganda, and Grace Life World Inc. John is very happily married to Olivia Grace Nakawombe, a human rights lawyer and pastor, and together they live right here in Uganda. John is an alumnus of the Leadership Development Program of Compassion International and Transforming Nations Alliance Uganda. He holds a Master's of Laws from the University of Dar es Salaam, a Bachelor of Laws from Nkumba University, a Diploma in Christian Counseling and Evangelism, and a Certificate in Christian Leadership. He is currently following a Master's of Divinity at Zoe Life Theological College USA and a postgraduate diploma in legal practice at the Law Development Center. Welcome, John. I'm sure you will give us a very good perspective and a response to the Castle think piece presented by Angelina. You're welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Castle team for organizing this interaction, which is very timely and very important for the work of non-government organizations in Uganda. So I want to applaud the entire team for putting this in place, and of course for enabling us to have a knowledge exchange on this. And already I have taken cognizance of so many things that we need to do as an organization. I am representing Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. Maybe just a brief on Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. We are a membership non-government organization. We bring together Christian lawyers in Uganda for fellowship, but also we aim at harnessing the potential of these lawyers to be able to reach out to the communities with the provision of legal aid, engaging in legal education and awareness, engaging in policy advocacy and research. And we also offer paralegal adversary services. And Uganda Christian Lawyers has got several branch offices. We have an office in Gulu, we have an office in Kasese, we have an office in Kayunga, we also have an office in Masaka, in Buyukwe, and then the secretariat is located in Kampala. we are very happy to be, of course, part of this discussion today. First and foremost, I want to thank Miss Angelina Twinomujuni for the well-thought research, quite enriching. I had the opportunity to read through before this event. I had the opportunity to read through the paper, and the paper is quite enriching. It covers, of course, most of the opportunities, of course, the challenges faced by NGOs, and most of the recommendations. And I'll begin from there. I will just provide a few insights as a form of maybe critiquing the paper, but I think the paper is quite enriching. Looking at the introduction of the paper, I think that the introduction should capture some of the challenges that non-government organizations are facing or have faced as a result of the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think that the introduction should really capture, of course, she tried to capture, but it's not so detailed. So I would prefer that the introduction should capture the challenges, and some of those that I noted that could go to the introduction could be closure of operations of NGOs, especially during the period of total lockdown, which commenced in the month of March 2020, and then of course the requirement for a special pass, where you were required to have a special pass or having been declared as an essential service. And I also think that the other challenge that should come at the introduction is challenges in adopting methods of working remotely by NGOs. This was a new phenomenon that was not familiar to most NGOs. And then, of course, adopting technological changes. There are so many new technological changes that were introduced as a result of the pandemic. So I think that that presented a challenge to a number of NGOs. Most of these non-government organizations did not have the right tools to use. Even right now, some of them don't have the right tools. As an organization, we needed to empower each staff that we're working with a laptop to be able to work from home. Those are challenges. Some organizations, I know of an organization called the Legal Aid Service Providers Network. They needed to actually buy bicycles for some of their staff and their workers to be able to provide rapid response during the lockdown. So those are some of the challenges that I think should actually come in the introduction, briefly should be noted in the introduction. And then I looked at the background. It is well thought, and I think the background of NGOs in Uganda, quite informative. And of course, I was very happy to learn our history, especially with regards to NGOs that I had not addressed my mind to. So thank you very much, Angela, for the well thought background. When it came to the framework of NGOs, I think that, well, you did give a good framework, but I think that you need to discuss more about these acts of parliament, because, our paper will be read by people that know the law, but also people that don't know the law. So I think that you should enrich that section on the legal framework and probably discuss more about the NGO Act of 2016, and also maybe you can also briefly talk about the Trustees Incorporation Act, and also maybe briefly about the Company Registry Act. You should tell people how probably NGOs are incorporated. And maybe the other thing that I didn't see coming out clearly is the issue of faith-based organizations. I'm aware that the current NGO Act tries to exclude the operation of churches from the Non-Government Organizations Act. I think it is also something that needs to be addressed, that is not very clear. I'm aware that churches are supposed to either incorporate as a company limited by guarantee, or they are supposed to incorporate under the Trustees Act, and then they are supposed to register with denominational, or rather the faith leading organizations like National Fellowship and others. So I think something has to come up there on FBOs. Otherwise, I think the paper is quite enriching. Of course, the recommendations there are very clear, and they are self-explanatory. Just to comment on opportunities and challenges. One, first of all, I think that the first opportunity that is presented by COVID-19 are issues to do with research. Organizations have got an opportunity currently to actually engage in research. You know, this is something that we did at the time when we're not allowed to move out, at the time we're not allowed to go out. We encouraged our staff to engage in research. So I think that this could be an opportunity for an organization. Probably an organization would think of coming up with a journal. You know, if your organization is dealing with issues of health, you could actually come up, you could actually encourage people to do research and probably come up with a journal of health. We don't have many of these journals in Uganda. The Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity has come up with a journal called the Christian Law Journal. And we are encouraging our Christian lawyers to actually write in this journal, which will actually be the copies will be in supply in 2021. So I think there is an opportunity presented in research. And so there's a potential there that NGOs can take up. I also think that NGOs can take up the issue of consultancies. This is also another opportunity that has been presented by the pandemic. You can now engage in consultancies, be able to be consulted, and of course also get some money out of these consultancies that you'll be engaged in. And then also, I think that there is also an opportunity for NGOs to build membership. Gone are the days when we have NGOs formed by family members. You know, you have an NGO, and this is very common for, of course, faith-based organizations. You have a faith-based organization that the pastor is the founder, and then the wife is the co-director, and then the son is the secretary. You know, gone are the days that such NGOs will actually, such organizations will actually stand the test of the day. You need to open the membership of your organization to other individuals, you know, and then have a membership fees. Of course, as Uganda Christian lawyers, we have been ably sustained by membership fees from our members. You know, so it is something that I would encourage, that for you to stand, this is an opportunity for you to build, to open up the organization, invite more members to actually join the organization. There's an organization that I sit on their board, Everlasting Hope Africa. This is something that I've encouraged them to do, to open up, to let people join the membership of the organization. And then the other opportunity that NGOs have are issues to do with advocacy, collective advocacy. We've done this as an organization. We've come up with petitions on the right to education, petitions on against torture, a number of petitions. We had a petition against the murder of a Makerere University Law student, Tegwe Manuel. We have made several petitions. Collectively, not only as Uganda Christian lawyers, but we've called on partners to join these initiatives, and it has been very successful. And I think that is an area that NGOs can take up.
there's no need to fear to air out the challenges in our society, especially if you come as a group. Will the NGO board, do away with 5 organizations that are coming up to talk about issues that are pressing the society? I think that collective advocacy is the way to go.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
The other thing is engaging the organizations to think of engaging in productive ventures now, income generating ventures. The law does not, yes, we know that NGOs are non-profit. However, the law does not prevent these non-government organizations to engage in activities that are going to provide funding of the activities that the NGOs are engaged in. So NGOs can think outside the box. You may think of acquiring land and engaging in agriculture. This is something that we are looking at as a fraternity now. And for you to be able to do that, you probably need a sustainability strategy for the organization. And you need to have long-term strategies and then short-term strategies on how you're going to stand. Because for us as a Christian organization, already our funding has been destabilized, because you know that there's a time when most of the NGOs actually lost funding because they were not coming to speak about minority rights, or they were not supporting minority rights. So as an organization, even having the word Christian on our name as an organization has actually affected us in terms of getting funding. So we have to think outside the box, engage in productive ventures to generate income, maybe agriculture, maybe you could think of piggery, maybe you could think of farming, you could think of something that can bring money to the organization. That is allowed within the framework of organizations. The other opportunity is, of course, online delivery of services. Probably you may need services of experts. As lawyers, we have some organizations that are actually providing legal services online, and we are currently consulting to find out how best we can deliver our services online. You know very well that even the courts are actually saying that our systems, the courts should now operate online. Of course, there are many challenges with that, because of course, not all the courts are empowered with the right technology. Not all the judicial officers know how to use technology. Not all the lawyers actually know how to use some of these things. So it's still a challenge, but we have to learn. We have to adopt to the new normal as non-government organizations. Can we find ways of delivering our services online? If you're an organization and you're dealing in evangelism, you may need to look at ways of reaching out to people online, probably through short videos. Even as Uganda Christian lawyers, we have actually come up with just to be able to reach out to our members. We have a daily devotional, but we've also adopted, we are explaining to our members, we are explaining to our donors what we are doing through short videos. We are telling the public about our services through short videos. So I think it's something that needs to be encouraged and probably adopted by the other NGOs. Then on the issue of local funding, of course, you will need to increase your local sales as an organization. You need to find certain items for sale that you can brand with the names of your institution and be able to sell out. However, if you don't have a big membership base, you'll not be able to sell out some of these items effectively. But you could you could develop or have a marketing department to market some of your sales to be able to raise finances locally. The other issue, of course, and thank you, Angelina, you raised it in some of your recommendations. You were talking about collaborations. As an organization, we are now moving to collaborating with other organizations. We've actually now decided to sign MOUs, memorandums of understandings with other organizations. During the lockdown, we actually had to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Interreligious Council of Uganda. we wanted to advise the council on protecting, together with the council, to protect religious liberty, but also to be able to review the different laws that are coming. And of course, we also participated in drafting of the SOPs for churches. We were consulted and we asked our member lawyers to actually draft and submit comments. So we successfully submitted it, and glory to God, churches were actually opened as a result of that intervention. So I think that collaborations are very important, and there's a lot of potential therein. We've also signed another memorandum of understanding with network.
We need to wrap it up. Your time has gone.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you very much. I believe that we should also adopt alternative modes of communicating our initiatives as organizations. Thank you. Because my time is up, I will stop here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. That was a very, very passionate presentation about the NGO situation. I will now have our third poll question, please. Let us have our third poll question. And here it is. What do you see as the greatest opportunity that the COVID-19 pandemic has offered NGOs and NPOs? 1, the opportunity to explore new methods of working or working at home and working remotely, the opportunity to rest and refresh, the increased availability of emergency funding for vulnerable communities, and the opportunity to increase local philanthropy. What do you see as the greatest opportunity that the COVID-19 pandemic has offered NGOs and NPOs? Is it the opportunity to explore new methods of working or working at home and working remotely? Or is it the opportunity to rest and refresh? Or is it the increased availability of emergency fund for vulnerable communities? Or is it the opportunity to increase local philanthropy? Please express your opinion on that poll. And you can still express your opinion using the Q&A and putting your questions and comments there. And the panelists will interact with you on that. Please express your opinion as the panelists interact with you. What do you see as the greatest opportunity that the COVID-19 pandemic has offered NGOs/NPOs? Is it the opportunity to explore new methods of working, or working at home and remotely? Or is it the opportunity to rest and refresh? Is it the increased availability of emergency funding for vulnerable communities? Or is it the opportunity to increase local philanthropy? Please express your opinion. And as we express our opinions, please go into the chat room also there and express your opinion there and interact with our panelists. Your voting is coming in. Highest is the new methods, the opportunity to explore new methods at 48%, and then local philanthropy at 42%, and then increased availability of emergency funding at 6%, and the opportunity to rest and refresh at 3%. Thank you very much for expressing your opinion. Thank you for taking part in the poll. And now it is my pleasure to invite our third panelist, Mrs. Jacqueline Asimwe, to give us her views about NGOs operations in Uganda. Mrs. Jacqueline Asimwe is the Chief Executive Officer at CV Source Africa and is a chronicler of untold stories. Her current passion is to tell the story of African generosity and Ubuntu. She is committed to shaping not just a new narrative, but the right narrative about the African people. She does this with and through CV Source Africa. She is a lawyer by profession and an advocate by calling. She uses her voice to advance social justice, causes that span a range of issues, including women's rights, human rights, good governance, and democracy. She has a curious and creative mind. She sees life in color and pictures and uses these tools to aid her work as a trainer and a facilitator. She uses her intuition to create, and so she is in a continual process of listening and tapping into her inner wisdom. She is very humorous. She loves to laugh, and she loves to cause others to laugh. She uses laughter both to heal herself and to heal others, and I hope she's going to teach us how to do that. She loves to bring and spread joy wherever she goes. She is passionate about leaders and supporting people to lead from their best selves and is a mentor and a coach. Jackie feeds on her elders in the women's movement and passes on what she learns to the generations coming after her. When she's not at work, she loves to play, to read, and to walk in nature. She loves trees and loves water. They feed her soul. Welcome with me, Jacqueline. I'm sure we are all anticipating to hear what Jackie has to say to us, what she has to feed our souls to. Welcome, Jackie. Please talk to the forum.
Unfortunately, Jackie dropped off early, but she had warned us.
Coming back on, she's having a technical problem.
Okay.
Okay, as we wait for Jackie to come on, we can start on the interaction. As she comes right back on, we can start on interacting and discussing, and when she comes on, she will take it up. One of the questions that came on, one of the comments that Angelina made was that was a phrase that she read on the NGO register, that the updated register shall vary at the discretion of the NGO Bureau. I want to call upon John to make a comment from your lawyer perspective, to make a comment on that. Should it be like that, or there is something that needs to change as far as registration with the NGO Bureau is concerned? John.
Thank you very much. First of all, of course, the NGO Bureau has been given power to regulate matters concerning in Uganda. And I think they enjoy that benefit that they are able to regulate. And therefore, if an organization does not comply with some of the requirements for the existence of an NGO, they can definitely vary the registrar depending on what they think the NGO has not actually complied with. But of course, you know that even before they vary, there has to be kind of a hearing that is legally given to these organizations that could be affected at any time. Yeah, so I think they do enjoy the benefit, but that benefit is supposed to be exercised within the confines of the law. Within the confines of the law, by giving a hearing to any organization that could be affected at the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And continuing on that, commenting on the regulatory environment for NGOs, could you comment on the regulatory environment for NGOs in Uganda as a follow-on to that question you have just answered? In your view, is the regulatory environment strong enough, or are there policy enhancements that you would recommend to make it a better environment for NGOs to operate in, and also to protect those that they are operating with? What is your comment on that, John?
Thank you. First of all, I do commend government for restructuring the issues to do with NGOs. Formerly, their activities were not clear. You know, you would apply for a permit to operate or a license to operate, and things were not clear. There was a lot of corruption at the former NGO board. But government has done a lot in terms of restructuring, in terms of operation, and of course the establishment of the NGO Bureau is a credit to government. Maybe what needs to be done is that I think NGOs should be allowed to enjoy the liberties guaranteed in the Constitution. For example, of course, the right to speak out. And NGOs should be allowed to communicate freely to the public, so that that does not affect their license or their operation at the end of the day. So I think government has done a lot to restructure, and right now the system is quite clear. Of course, they also shifted their offices from the Ministry of Internal Affairs currently to Kingdom Kampala. So it's quite organized. The fees are now, the fees is clear in terms of registration, and things are done on time. And to me, I think that it's quite, the environment is quite favorable now, of course, in spite of the political influence at times.
Okay, thank you very much. Jacqueline Asimwe is back. Jackie, I had already introduced you, so welcome to respond to the think piece. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Apofia, and thank you to all our listeners and viewers on the Facebook Live. My apologies, the internet had issues, but I'm so glad to be participating in this conversation, in this very important conversation. And I will highlight a few things, especially related to local resource mobilization and the question of local giving. During the height of the lockdown, through the National COVID Task Force, Ugandans collectively raised close to $13 million. And so what that tells me is the potential is massive. In fact, generosity is part of our genetic code. And we didn't just start giving in the time of COVID. Ugandans have been giving before and will continue giving. And as CivSource Africa, the organization that I work with, we did in fact chronicle the stories of giving that happened. And if you'd like, there are reports on our website. We did 4 volumes of giving stories that happened during the time of COVID. And I even suspect that between what was collected by the National Task Force and the stories we collected, we didn't even tell a 10th and 100th of the story, because neighbors were literally giving to neighbors, neighborhood associations. There was so much giving that happened. And so I think our first challenge, which is also an opportunity, is how do we consistently tell the story of generosity that happens in our country on a daily basis. someone somewhere, even right now, is giving of their time, their treasure, their talent to some other Ugandan to improve another person's life. So the first challenge for us is how do we collect and collate that data on giving? Because giving is happening. So that is one. I think the other thing for me is, and Angela did mention, the very stark financial fragility of nonprofit organizations. One of the ways that NGOs have tried to address this is to set up an NGO cooperative. And I'm not sure many people even know about it, but we do have an NGO cooperative called Nafasi. And Nafasi is a Swahili word meaning opportunity. So we need to be letting our staff members know, because it is for staff members of those that work in nonprofit organizations. So we need to encourage our staff members to be saving. And the beauty with Nafasi is you can save as little as 50,000 shillings with them. But the issue is to be building up the financial buffer for our staff members, so that when we have crisis moments like these, or crisis moments when we lose major funding, we're not worried both about our work and our staff, going hungry. So there is Nafasi Cooperative. Please look it up. Please sign up. I am a member. I save money every month because we all need to save money for a rainy day. And that facility is for nonprofit organizations and those that work there. The other one that we attempted to start is called the Ujasiri Fund. And Ujasiri means courage. It was a courage fund precisely to address the fact that NGOs are largely financially fragile. And also the fact, as some of the speakers did mention this morning, that a lot of our funding, one, comes from the West, and therefore is driven by their agenda, by their interests. And so Ujasiri was our fund to cater for our interests, to cater for our organizations, especially those in need. And Ujasiri would be a pot where, as NGOs, again, little, because little grows over time. So putting in a little money, those little savings that we sometimes get when we do the conversion of the Forex that we receive from external funding, or the savings, the little savings that we get when we do projects. So this is a collective fund. Yes, I know at individual level, we need to be saving our own money as organizations, but this is a pooled fund. It's a way in which we can collectively give back to those that are in need. So there's Nafasi and there's Ujasiri. These are our own initiatives to address our own local challenges and to meet our own local needs. So I wanted to make that clear. I think the other thing, as we talk about local giving, like I said, it happens all the time, whether through churches, through alumni associations. I'm sure many of us who are OBs and OGs of our secondary schools, we gather and give funding back to our schools, back to the pupils of those schools. We give through Rotary clubs. There's so much giving that is happening. And I think part of our challenge is, just because organizations are not giving to me doesn't mean Ugandans are not giving to the nonprofit sector. They are, all day, every day. So again, we just need the data. Who is giving to what? Because that is when we will know what are the gaps, what are the sectors that are being given too much, if there's such a thing, and where do we need to be directing or redirecting the local giving that is happening. But we can't do it without data. So data is very, very critical. We need to do it. The other thing that would engender trust is a concept called radical accountability. Now, as organizations, yes, we do accountability. Is there corruption, as Angela mentioned? Yes, there is, unfortunately, and we try to weed it out, but we do accountability, oftentimes upward to those that give us money. But the concept of radical accountability is, even before I am required, I am an open book. People know how much I get, who I get it from, what I do with the money I get, and anybody can see my financials, not just those that give me money. So the communities that I work with and serve and partner with are able to know what have we got collectively and what is it doing. Radical accountability, that I am accountable even before I am asked. Can we start to journey towards radical accountability? The other thing is, have we set up systems, even as we want to do local resource mobilizations, have we set up the systems to be able to do that? Because a lot of our systems, and a lot of us, because we get money from the West, usually make our organizations resemble those that can receive money. And indeed, that's what we do, right? We create organizations that are able to receive external money. If we want to do local resource mobilizations, have we set up ourselves to receive local funding? This is an example that I often give. If you go to any local church across this country on a Sunday, people will give both cash, but they will also give the 2 eggs, the avocado, because our churches have been set up to receive all kinds of giving. Now, have we set up our nonprofits to receive all kinds of donations? Or do we just want those that will give us money? How about the old woman who can only give her chicken and she says, I am passionate about justice, but what I have, I can give you 1 chicken per month. Would you be able to receive that form of generosity? So we need to be thinking, have we set up our organizations to be receivers of local giving? And to generate local giving, relationship building matters. I think often when I hear us talk about local fundraising, I think we think I can just make a call and people will come. We need to be building the relationships that engender that giving, that engender interest, that connect to felt community needs. I was talking this week to someone who has an organization in Kabare, and she was telling me the beautiful stories of all kinds of people that give to her organization. And I just suggested, do you have a book of remembrance, a book of memory, where every time someone gives you time, treasure, talent, all the people that volunteer, all the people that talk about our organizations, all those are all that is local giving. So do we remember them? Do we have their names? Do we record what they've given so that we can thank people, so that we can continuously build those relationships? So again, are we set up to actually do local fundraising? Because the opportunities are there. Do we have the data? Who is giving to what? What are the interests, and how do we be at the intersection of the need and the money? And I think then very finally, we need to understand that giving is emotive. There is a journey from the heart to the pocket. So do we understand what moves Jackie's hand to her pocket? We need to move the heart. So in what ways are we moving people's hearts towards the work that we do? And it just doesn't arise. So we need to be investing very heavily in communicating in all kinds of ways to all kinds of people. Because I think we communicate narrowly, mostly in English, mostly in, there are ways that exclude the people that we're trying to generate money from. If you think of any of these for-profit companies, and we need to be learning from them, the very funky words and local slang words that they use, but they know that when I use this slang word, I'm connecting to my base, to the person that I want to connect to my product. So we need to be thinking about creative ways of communicating, not in our language, because I think we often communicate for ourselves in our language. And by our language, I mean our NGOs or English, foreign languages, But if I want to connect to that local giver, what is the cool word in Ruchiga, in Luo, that I can use to express what I do so that people understand what I am doing and how I am doing it? I'm being radically accountable, and I am investing in a relationship with them. So those would be my few comments. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jackie. You have given us a lot to think about the way we give and about the way we receive. I am sure the rest of the panelists have been given something to mull upon and will be responding when we come to the discussions. And that's what we are going to do next. We are moving into the general discussions. But before we do that, let us have our fourth poll question, please. And as they put it up, please continue putting your questions and comments in the Q&A so that we interact from there, even as we interact verbally with the panelists. So the fourth poll question is up and running. It's about the regulatory framework. How would you rate the regulatory framework for NGOs and NPOs in Uganda? How would you rate the regulatory framework for NGOs and NPOs in Uganda? Is it sufficient and will be able to weed out fake organizations? Is it too stringent and has the potential of closing organizations that are otherwise doing a good job? Is it too stringent and often targets organizations which are critical of the government? Is it adequate? It's adequate and it will provide reliable data on the sector in the long run if organizations comply. So what is your view? What is your view about our regulatory framework on NGOs? Is it sufficient and will be able to weed out fake organizations? Is it too stringent and has the potential of closing organizations that are otherwise doing a good job and they are just closed down? Or is it too stringent and targeting organizations which are critical of the government and they are closed down because of that? Or is it adequate and provides reliable data on the sector in the long run if organizations comply? Please express your opinion. So far, about 50% of you have voted. I encourage the rest to vote and also to type in your comments on the Q&A section. And we can close the poll just about now and look at the results. Yes, the results have come in and it's about well balanced with 35% of you saying it's too stringent and has the potential of closing organizations that are otherwise doing a good job, that our regulatory framework can close organizations that are doing a good job. And then next is 30% of you are saying it is adequate and it will provide reliable data on the sector in the long run. And 22% are saying it is too stringent and it targets those that are critical of government. And 13% are saying it is sufficient and will enable us to weed out fake organizations. Thank you very much for expressing your opinion. This will inform our paper as we develop it for sharing with the decision makers. And now we will go into the discussion, the general discussion, where we will look at your questions and comments and other issues of interest to which our panelists will be requested to respond. And I will begin with Jackie because she's going away soon. Jackie, you talked about our own local philanthropy that Ugandans are giving to nonprofits, but there is no coordinated data. So is there a need to bring a sort of organization into this process of receiving support locally? is there a need to do some sort of streamlining so that we can follow it up and organize it better so that our NGOs and NPOs can benefit from local support? And if so, what kind of system is required to be put in place? How would we go about that?
Apofia, please repeat the question. I'm not sure I understood it.
You talked about local giving.
Yes.
That we are receiving a lot of support, but it is not documented, but it's there. And it can even increase if we have a system of receiving it. If I have my chicken to give you, if your system would be able to accept it. So as a nation, how would we go about putting in place such a system that can accept and receive support locally, because we do need local support?
Okay, so two things come to mind. One, there's an organization called The Good Currency, run by a friend of mine called Shem Opolot. Again, you can Google this organization. It's run by a Ugandan, The Good Currency. And one of Shem's passions is connecting those that want to do good with organizations that need good done. But also his other passion is how to measure the good that is being done. And I think we need both systems, right? So, and the way he would like to measure good is to be able indeed to enable us measure when people come and volunteer for us, when they give of their time, how do you quantify Jackie's time when she goes, whatever I do, how do you quantify it? I've given my time to a local organization. How does that get quantified? That old woman we were talking about, I was talking to Grace Villa, Ruth Bahika, and she was telling me how every month there is an old woman in Kabale who comes with a basket of potatoes to the home that they run for children. And she says, this is what I can give. I don't have much, but I have a basket of potatoes. So how do we quantify that kind of thing? How do we receive it? When I said that we usually set up our organizations to respond to donations from the West, we do, because what do they require? Governance, and we put up systems. Finance, a finance policy, and we write the policy. A human resource policy, and we write it. We are responding to that. But have we thought about what does it take to respond to the local giver? And I think it's, I may not have the answer. We can sit and brainstorm, or we can, in fact, walk to these local churches. What is the ways? How do you quantify? How do you use that resource that comes in kind? And how do I set up systems in kind that receive that donation? And remember that I also said, I think one way that we can begin to set up those systems is our book of memory. Do we diligently write all those that give us funding? I'm sure if any of us are asked that get money from Western donors, again, we can say, you say gives me money or done defeat, or we know them. But do we also diligently know and write and communicate with Ugandans who give us, or do we take their giving for granted? If Jackie has given of her time for this webinar, has Castle written me as one of those that have given to advance their cause of information, of thought leadership? Or will they list in their people that give them money, people that give to them, only those that give money? So again, it's possible, and we can. Let's start it. I was going to say something finally, and it has skipped my mind. Forgive me. When I remember, I will come back to it. But it's possible. We do need to do the research. One of the things that as CivSource we are passionate about is beginning to build the body of research. There's hardly any research on giving in Uganda, and it is sad. And like I said, yet giving happens every day, So we started by doing a research on 5 districts, on giving practices in 5 districts. We would like to do a research on corporate giving to understand what are the motivations, who do they give to, what sectors do they give to, and how do we make connections. There's so much that can be done, even just alumni associations. What do they give to? How much do they collect? How do they channel this money? There's so much. And we need to spread or connect either with universities, with research associations, so that this becomes a worthwhile research agenda that contributes to the nonprofit sector.
Thank you very much, Jackie. As you talk, I begin to think that maybe our NGOs and Npos systems are, as you said, are set up to respond to receiving support from the Western systems. Don't we need, as NGOs, to have a sieve? Do we need to continue responding that way? Is there a time when we can say, no, we are not going to do that? Or are we so dependent, so needy, so desperate that whatever the Western system demands, we do? Are we that kind of people?
I think unfortunately we are, but I think two things. So one, it is to fund our own work. And I talked about Osapiri, which is an attempt by a collective of nonprofits to start to build up the finances we will one day need to fund our own work. We also want to be able to say, you know, I got money from Uganda Christian Lawyers Association, or I got, so building up our own resources to respond to our own needs. That is one. I think the other thing, and that came out very evidently in COVID, is we need to reassess the power relations. And I know it's an ongoing, it's an elephant in the room all the time with nonprofits, but I think this moment allows us to reassess what is the power relation. And when Angela talked about collaboration, often we think of collaboration to work together, but I think there's also thinking about collaboration to push back against those things that don't work for us. I'm on the board of an organization, and last week we were undergoing a process of vetting for a Western donor, and they take a week of your time, a whole week. And some of the questions they were asking made me think, literally, that they were requiring of us to have certain things in place for them to be comfortable to fund us. And as I sat there in that meeting, I was thinking, but you're not taking the time to understand what we are and how we want to do our work. And I know we are often desperate, pushed against the wall. We need this money to do our work, but until we find our voice. And if I can't find my voice as a single organization, can we find a collective voice as nonprofits to say, if you want to fund us in Uganda, these are the things you need to be aware of. As CivSource, one of the things we did to enable us push back is we also have partnership principles. If you want to partner with me, it's not one way, it's not a one-way street. If you want to ask me for my financials, I have the right to ask you for your financials. And until because that's how partnership is built, right? You want to know about me, I also want to know about you, because maybe there are things that you do that I think, no, I thank you, but no thanks. So we need to start to build our voice to push back against things that don't work for us. But part of the pushing back is building our own financial muscle.
Finally, could it be this adage, he who pays the piper, the piper payer is the one who chooses the tune. And if you're not careful, he will choose the tune and will also dictate on how you dance to the tune. So it could be that. And following on to that, there is a need for change of mindset. I think our mindset is also a problem because we have this mindset of being needy and dependent and really needing to receive from the West. And we haven't, as you have said, looked at giving in a more open framework. So what is it that we need to do to change the mindset of Ugandans, to change the mindset of NGOs to look wider? Yes, we can talk here, there are these beautiful ideas, but will they be absorbed? What is it we need to do to get them to be absorbed so that we can dance to our own tune?
So two things come to mind very quickly. When Npos was, before we did this 5-district research, we just randomly went on the streets of Kampala asking people, are Ugandans givers? Do we give? Are we philanthropists? And, people are like, are we? Do we? Because in our mind, a philanthropist is usually white, Western, usually male, because even females, are not necessarily, so people can name for you Bill Gates and Branson and, those big ones. And yet we give, like I said, when you start to interrogate that further and you say, but you also give, don't you give to XYZ? So part of it is an identity question. Do we see ourselves as givers? I think part of the challenge is, as Africans, giving is like breathing to us. So if you stop and ask a human being, do you breathe? Of course, really? You're even asking me that question? Again, if you ask a Ugandan, do you give? We haven't been taught to name it and to claim it. So claim our identity as generous as givers, because I think once a person is able to see themselves through their identity, then they walk a different journey. So therefore, because I know I am a giver, when I am negotiating a contract with a Western donor, I know that I'm not coming to the table with nothing, because I wouldn't be having this conversation if you thought that I have nothing to give. I may not have the money, but I have the expertise. I have the connection. So as Npos, we have defined, what do we bring to the table? Culture, connections, networks. Because we understand our culture, we understand Africa, we understand Uganda, and you need that from me as a donor. So anyway, without going into a long story, it's understanding, what do I bring to the table? I may not bring money, but there are things that I absolutely bring to the table. The other thing is value-based negotiation, because you will know if I am negotiating on the basis of my values, I know where to pull the plug. I know where to say, this does not align with who I am as an organization or with who we want to be in our community. So values-based receiving, values-based negotiating. And like I said, when that can't happen, a collective. So how do we collectively come together to push back when we need to?
Thank you very much. Jacqueline, I will move to Priscilla. Those are very, very beautiful and provocative ideas. They set us kind of thinking out of the box. What is it? What else can we be doing? How else should we be thinking in order to support our NGOs and NPOs without having to look at the Western world as our saviors? And now moving over to Oxide, Priscilla, still thinking of giving. Are there times you think when NGOs use philanthropy to hide the ills they are causing to society? Like they put it forward as a shield. I'm supporting you. I'm giving you A, B, C, D. So you must allow me to do E, F, G, which is harmful. And because our thinking is we are needy, we allow them to do that kind of thing. They hide the ills behind philanthropy. So how should NGOs guard against philanthropy that masks undesirable societal effects? Can generosity from whoever is giving, can it be vetted in this season of financial stringency like we are in now? Can we vet the giving based on what the NGO actually does? Priscilla.
Thank you so much. It is true that NGOs can give so that they can carry out on agendas which may not be desirable. and there are NGOs of that kind, or funders even of that kind. And I think it is that issue of where we shouldn't be too vulnerable not to refuse. One of the things that NGOs also should do is empowering the poor people that we work with. You know, when you have an empowered community, they will not just accept anything, they will also put demands on you. One of the things we used to do when I was actively working in an NGO, which was a few years ago, was to empower the communities. Empower them to know what they want and to be able to articulate what they want. Empower them to participate in the decisions you are making concerning this project you are going to do, and they are part of the voice of what has to be done. And I saw some local people who would come up and really say no to some things and say, this is how we want it and what we do not want. Another demand I've also seen, especially from the West, when this LGBT agenda came up, I was working with an NGO which was Christian-based, and they knew Uganda had a strong voice against LGBT, and therefore as a Christian NGO, what are you doing? And I remember being approached also by the Norwegian embassy. They had their own people to come and find out what are you doing as an organization. And I was very clear to tell them that our mandate is in lifting people out of poverty. We don't mind who you are, whether you are gay or whether you're not a gay. And if we start talking about those gay things, then we are discriminating. So I think as leaders in NGOs, we also need to be clear about what we are doing and why we are doing what we are doing. Otherwise, we can easily be pushed into, let me receive this and close my eyes to the other, as long as I have this. And I know many NGOs have done it. For some of us who've been very clear and said, no, we are pursuing poverty, we are not going to look into this, and therefore will not be able to report how many gay people are receiving support, because that is not our mandate. Our mandate is in lifting people out of poverty. So I think that being very clear, and what I have realized also, sometimes as NGOs, we think that donors don't need us, but they need us because they also need a reputable organization where they are going to push money and be sure to get results. So because if they know you're a reputable organization and they want to work with you, there are certain things they will let go of and not demand them from you if you're very clear. So I think as NGOs, we also need to be very good at what we are doing, that somebody will want to work with us. The funders are also busy wanting people to work with, people who will help them report good results back to their communities where they get money from. So I think that we need to have that confidence and be able to say, no, we don't do that kind of thing, because this is our own mandate, what we are going to do. And therefore not bend to all the whims that funders come with. And also this hiding, NGOs hiding as they do other things. I think it is a common thing. That's how a lot of NGOs have come in who are promoting the gay agenda. They want an entry point and they find a hungry NGO, and therefore things are hidden. So it is something we need to stand against as NGOs and say no. And if we can collectively work together, and they want an NGO, and even people in the West want to bring money into the nation and they can't get a credible NGO to work with, they are also in trouble. So I think that is a fear we need to overcome and know that if we have a strong voice together, they will eventually have to back down on some demands they are putting to us.
Thank you very much. And still going.
Can I go to something related to that also?
Yes, yes, please.
Something related to that which we didn't touch because of time was to do with governance. You know, and founder member syndrome. Unfortunately, today in Uganda, you find that we form NGOs our local NGOs are formed out of so many selfish reasons. We promote the fact that we are going to serve these poor people or vulnerable people, but the back of our minds, we also want to make money for ourselves. But we try to house it in another way, like there are these very vulnerable people we are trying to support. And because of that, our governance structures are actually very weak and very loose. We shall invite to our boards people who will say yes to whatever we do. We don't want people who ask us many questions or say, no, we cannot do that. That is not accountable. Then we have founder members who become aged and they do not want to leave the organization. They want to continue there, and it's because they may not be able to get the financial benefit they could get from this NGO. We get NGO boards which are full of relatives and buddies. And because of that, we do not get good governance that will cause us to be credible in every way, or question us and cause us to think the things we need to think about. So I think also we need to have a revolution in the governance of our NGOs, so that NGOs, we have people who will come in and with the right competencies, but ask you the questions that you need to address, so that you can become a more credible organization. And also to be clear with that founder member syndrome. I worked with one NGO and we're trying to get one founder member out, because the founder member at that time had become a challenge to this organization. And we're trying to say you could become a member of the board. And this founder member was always fighting with the CEO when the CEO was trying to bring about good things that needed to be done, and was saying no to some of the money of the NGO ending up with the relatives. But this person couldn't see it that way. They felt we are losing our organization, which we formed. And we formed it because we needed also money in our adult age. So the reason why we form NGOs is also sometimes suspect. We look like we are helping people or serving a social good, but actually it is for our own purposes. And in that way, it makes the NGO lose credibility. And even funding, like we want to get from the local people. Once members know that the NGO is full of relatives, members may not want to give money to that kind of NGO if the governance is full of relatives. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. That causes us to think of the foundations of the NGOs. How are they founded, and is there something that needs to be done about that? I will move to Angelina now. Angelina, looking at how NGOs are founded, as Priscilla was explaining, that sometimes the founding members are a problem. So what kind of solutions would we be offering in establishing firm foundations for locally grown NGOs so that they can operate effectively without being pulled back by family ties or pulled back by whatever foundations they are established upon? How would we handle that?
Okay. Thank you, Oxidapofia. That is a very interesting question, because you're asking me what you can do about the foundation of a house that is already standing, so to speak. Like I intimated earlier, you can do nothing about the past. Sometimes an organization has already been formed on a foundation that is weak. But what you can do is improve where you are standing today. So there are many organizations that started on wrong foundations, maybe especially faith-based organizations. There's usually a challenge or passion-driven, but it becomes a challenge later when the organization grows. So if you find you're maybe a minister and your pastor is, you're a pastor and your wife is the one heading the development arm, if you realize that if you're listening into this conversation, what you can begin to do is to streamline your operations. There are a number of governance checklists that can help you to understand what you need to have a strong foundation. So the answer to that would be, you can start today to ensure that your governance structures, your systems and policies are robust enough to attract additional funding, to attract credibility within the sector, and to be able to work more effectively in your area of intervention. I guess, like we were saying earlier, COVID-19 has given us an opportunity to reflect. So you may realize now that the structure is not strong enough. There are opportunities that you can take to be able to improve. The organization I work with has checklists, which I'm happy to share with anyone who would want to just to check yourself and say, what do I need to have in place in order to increase my own credibility in the sector? And these are known across the board. So the past, you can do nothing about the past, but what you can do is sit down and try to strengthen the systems using internationally recognized standards. And some of the ideas that Jackie proposed, which were out of the box, try and integrate some of these new concepts within your new structure. Thank you, Apofi. I hope I answered you comprehensively.
Yes, thank you very much, Oxide Angelina. You are saying that the foundations may not, it may be difficult to change the foundations unless you break and rebuild, but maybe the walls are easier to tackle at the wall level. You can make some changes at the wall level, which takes me to the comment from Agnes Yahweh. She's saying, how well are NGOs organized to advance a collective good, like the great ideas suggested by the panelists? She says, I see many organizations, including those set up as collaborative platforms, going down into self-focusing and self-survival, and this kills the collective vision. So in your recommendations, how would we tackle that to support organizations not to focus so much inwards on self-survival, trying to survive, which kills the vision they came up with in the first place, but to be open-minded and to focus on the collective good? How do we go about that?
Okay, I think one thing that has clearly come out in this discussion is a need for a mindset shift. It's very easy for organizations to feel that they will not survive if they are working in partnerships, even unfamiliar partnerships with other people. So there's a real great need for a mindset shift, and a need for us to embrace networks and platforms in order to increase our voices. I think in the past it was easy, like you heard from the genealogy of NGOs. There are organizations that dominated one particular geographical area, but that's not the case anymore. In one geographical area, you may have about 300 organizations. So this will call for a mindset shift. As NGOs, we need to look for networks and platforms. We need to join these networks and platforms that promote our values, our ideals, our identity, and contribute, pay the membership fees, attend meetings, contribute, because it's better for us to be a small part of a big thing, rather than being in your small organization that is not being impactful because you do not have a stronger voice. So I would really recommend networks and platforms. There are a number, local, regional, and even international networks and platforms. Those can strengthen our ability to move in one direction. That like I said in the presentation, the lone worker mentality is over. You cannot be carrying out an intervention. Let's talk about child rights and child protection, the area that I'm very familiar with, and no other player knows you. That is impossible. If you are known by all the other players, then you need to rethink and reevaluate your effectiveness and efficiency in the sector. Thank you.
And lastly, with you, you talked about the mindset shift. Are we also, as we look at networks and funds and stuff like that, are we also looking at the young? I see Naki Kadu saying, nurture and empower the mindset of the young and youth, and you can transform a whole nation. Is Uganda going in this direction? Is the NGO sector going in this direction? Or have we neglected the young and the youth?
That's an interesting question, Apophia. And I think it's something that we need to look at critically. I believe that it's time for us to include the young and the youth in these kinds of discussions, because the future actually belongs to them. I hope that they are listening in this morning. But yes, we need to rethink and strategize and involve the young people and the youth in these kinds of discussions, because it will help to influence the future. It's important that these discussions are held with them. Maybe we haven't, because usually by the time you are able to by the time you're able to understand a sector comprehensively, you have spent quite an amount of time in the sector, gaining a lot of experience. But yes, I think we need to figure out ways of introducing young people to this sector early, particularly because there is no particular course that is geared only to NGOs. So we really need to find a way of letting them know what's happening so that they can make a difference and be the change that we want to see.
Thank you very much, Angelina. Talking about the young, let me move to John. John, as we read your profile, I saw that you're very active in the church. And we have a comment here from Ben Twin. He says, now I must warn that because churches have this grassroots organization capacity, the state might be wary of letting us be all we can be in giving God's people due life support capacity. But that's not our problem, it is theirs. Are we looking at the church as part of the NGO world in this sense? How does the church link into this NGO space, especially as we operate under restriction of the pandemic?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I remember in my initial presentation, I had stated that actually churches have been excluded from the churches have been excluded from the act, the NGO, the current NGO act. The churches were excluded. Even when you look at the description of what an organization is in the act, it actually doesn't talk about religious institutions. So currently, the framework is you basically, if you're to register a church, you don't need to go through all the requirements of NGO registration because it is quite tedious. So someone only needs to register as a company limited by guarantee, and or register as a trust. Of course, I know that a few register as trusts. Most of them are limited by guarantee. So then after doing that, you're required to deposit your and actually there is no legal requirement, but this is what is in practice. You're basically supposed to then probably register with the National Fellowship or the Born Again Faith in Uganda. I think those are the only places that churches are always started by individuals. The Anglican Church and the Catholic Church have got a streamlined system on how they actually do their churches. So churches are exempted from the NGO operations. However, if a church is registered, but then you want to do NGO work, you know, you're doing charity, probably you have a children's organization and you want to keep children as a church. I have been in so many ministries to teach pastors. I realized there are so many things that churches are doing that are unregulated. For example, you find a ministry keeping children in the church, you know, and yet the NGO arm of the church is not registered, and it's a challenge. So it is only a requirement for you to go under the NGO Act or under the NGO Bureau if you want to do charity related work. But if it is purely church, you're not required to proceed under the NGO Act. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, still talking about regulating. Beyond regulating the operation of NGOs, would it be useful for the government to provide, to go beyond being a regulator, regulating churches, regulating NGOs, regulating NPVOs, going beyond that and provide some kind of support for NGOs to improve their functionality? They, in any case, contribute to the NGOs contribute to the realization of government sector targets. They contribute a lot to government achieving its targets. So should the regulatory framework be changed to make government support NGOs because they contribute to government performance? Would that work?
Yes, thank you. Because first of all, the government has a role of taking care of the well-being of its citizens. And of course, we know that NGOs are vehicles of socio-economic transformation, even civic transformation in terms of rights of people. Yeah, so I think I was actually noting it down here that I think we need a special fund, you know, from government, just like, you know, there's a national budget and everyone takes off from the national cake. I think that if the NGO Bureau is empowered to actually, you know, pass some kind of funding to these organizations that are registered under the Bureau, I think that would be something good. It would actually promote the national objectives of the country, but also it would help our organizations to be sustainable, to be able to live. Though it presents a challenge. When you allow government to give you money, they will regulate how you talk. They will regulate what you do. They will tell you here is not, you don't cross this line. So it is also another challenge, but it would be a good practice to actually have these NGOs funded by government, because the NGOs supplement the efforts of governments in so many ways. So it would be a good thing, but you can't rule out political influence, patronage at the end of the day.
Wouldn't that be the same issue that we've been talking about from Western funders? We've been saying that they give us money, and then the money comes with conditions of which systems we need to put in place, what sort of accountability we need to make. So many conditions. Isn't it the same with government? Doesn't it take us back to the one who pays the piper is the one who is calling the tune? Whether you get the money from government or you get it from Western donors, they all have their conditions. So maybe we just accept it like that, right?
It is okay to have someone push you, but outside the country, but not pushing you inside your country where you're supposed to respond.
Yes.
I think it's better if you're pushed from out, but not here, where you base and where your activities are conducted. You are supposed to be provided with a free environment to be able to operate.
Okay. You prefer a push from far rather than from a push from within. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Let me go to Priscilla, ask you to comment on that same question. Government versus Western, they're all pushers. So what's the difference?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, they are all pushers. First of all, I also believe the government should start putting aside some budget for NGOs, because the NGOs are helping government to fill in a lot of work where government is not doing so. But again, the issue of losing independence becomes so critical. But I think there's a lot of growth that is needed in our politics in a nation. I was working with an international NGO for many years, and they used to get money from the government, but they would also put up lobby, a lot of criticism towards some policies which were not good, and they will still continue to getting that money. So I think there's a maturity which is needed in our politics also, to know that the NGO is also helping the government to be better, and not think that when they speak, they critique, then they are bad people, but they are helping government to do better. But I also agree it is easier to deal with a push outside because they are not on your doorstep every day than the push within. If the government was to cause NGOs to lose independence, then it is more difficult. But it is easier to negotiate with these NGOs from outside and tell them, no, this is how we work. This is our culture. This cannot be accepted in our culture. This is what we are going to do and the deliverables we are going to do, because this is not, we cannot do it like this because it's against the cultures of the communities where we are working, and it will be accepted more easily. But that kind of negotiation is not easy internally. But I think it's a talk or lobby that needs to be done, but also a maturity in our politics to be able to accept criticism as a way in which to help us look inside and become better. But once we get funding from government, I know the independence is gone, but we need to see that we can fight for our independence as NGOs. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, talking about looking inside, Naki Kadu is saying, shouldn't we be working towards being a country that no longer relies on any NGOs or foreign aid? That shouldn't it be what we are striving for, so that we are no longer relying on NGOs or foreign aid? What is your response to Naki Kadu's comment?
I think what she's saying is so true, but we cannot do it drastically at a go. It has to be a gradual shift as we build within us a new mindset, a new local philanthropy. And once the local philanthropy begins to realize that yes, there's a benefit in contributing towards local NGOs, and slowly by slowly, we shall be able to grow away from the external funders. And actually the truth is, even external funders are being challenged in this season. So there's going to be even reduced funding from the West because of the challenges they have in their economies. And we should move towards that. But It cannot happen in one day. First of all, locally, we need also to change our mindset. We have this mindset, what is the benefit that I'm getting in putting my money in a local NGO? Sometimes we see a benefit, say if we are saving in a circle and we know I'm going to get interest or dividends on the shares, but an NGO, you may not exactly get that kind of dividend. So we need that mind shift also to know that there is a dividend when you give towards the poor, to the well-being of the poor. There is something that benefits from what you benefit from that. There's a good feeling that I have contributed to improving life in this community. We need to change because we are still, unfortunately, we still want to know, what do I benefit if I put money in this local NGO? How am I going to benefit from it? And if I'm not benefiting, we may put in something, but very little or nothing at all. But also NGOs, we need to build our credibility to know that when money is put in, we are not going to squander it to our own personal benefit, buy some big expensive car, which we shall drive around and carrying our own produce from our farms and not exactly reaching out to the poor people. So we need to change both as individuals, our population, but also the local NGOs, how we present ourselves and how we are seen, to be able to be seen as credible. And actually there is something we are doing for the local population to improve their plight. But yes, we need to move from dependence. And I think as we move away from the dependence on the international NGOs, they will also be able to come and meet us at our terms, because they will know we have elsewhere where we can get funding from. But once they know we have no other alternatives, they can also push us against a wall much more easily. Yeah, so I agree with Nachi, we need to move, but it's not drastic. It will be a gradual move that we need to quickly have started even yesterday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Oxide Priscilla. Let me change gear and go back to John. John, NGOs and civil society organizations are frequently at the forefront of criticizing the government on accountability issues. However, NGOs have not demonstrated a comparable level of accountability for their own actions, and yet there is no mechanism for public scrutiny over NGOs. So is this a case of the pot calling the kettle black? Do you think, aren't we all the same?
Not exactly.
Be able to attract funding, you should have very clear policies against corruption and mismanagement of resources as an NGO. So have an anti-corruption policy in place or strategy to be able to stand against corruption at any level within the institution. You know, one of the challenges that we are facing as the Christian Lawyers Fraternity is that our judiciary is covered with a lot of corrupt tendencies, you know, right away from fighting in the court, you know, to even to the time of hearing. There are several corruption tendencies. But I think that as NGOs, we must break the cycle. We must stand on the truth, and we must encourage, we must show an example out there to the government, but also to the public, and people are watching. And also we should know that these we are just stewards of these resources. They are not our resources, they are resources of the people, and they are resources actually from God himself, who has empowered us to be in those positions at a particular time. So as NGOs, we need to have stringent policies to be able to stand against corruption. And I think that's why we have audits. And I'm aware that some people just showcase these audits without actually the actual audit taking place. But if you want to stand the test of the time, your system must be clear. You must have consistent audits, and they should be annual, and the firms that are auditing should be firms with a good reputation, and you should have an accounting department and separate issues of management of money from from the within the administration, so that probably the CEO does something else and then the accounts department does something else. So there has to be independence if we are going to be able to attract funding from outside sources or even locally within. Because when people give you their money, they want to see an accountability. They want to see the money used for what it is meant to do. And they want to see a report at the end of the day. So we are not exceptional as non-government organizations.
Well, Ernest is saying that the question of accountability of NGOs is key. Who do they account to? How do they utilize funds raised? It has been left to self-accounting. Maybe we need incentives for making public accountability instead of remaining on self-accounting.
We are not just self-accounting. We actually account to and of course I'm talking about NGOs that have clear founding membership or members. We don't just account to the board, we account to the AGM, and also of course we account to the government at the end of the day, actually, because if you mismanage funds, you'll end up in court. So there's no way you would think that we are not accounting to even the government. Yeah.
Thank you very much, John. I will give one last question to Angelina. Angelina, looking at how we are operating now under the COVID pandemic, has the pandemic experience caused a reorientation by NGOs in the way they operate, or they have reverted to business as usual? Have they, as the pandemic struck and there was lockdown, there was kind of a change, a shift, and then as the lockdown eased, they reverted back to business as usual? What does this mean for NGO costs, efficiencies, and innovations, this kind of change? What does it mean for NGOs in terms of costs, efficiencies, and innovations?
Thank you, Oxida Pofia. That is an interesting question, and the answer to that will vary across the board. There are some organizations that have actually taken this time and used it to improve their systems, improve their processes, try to see how they can work remotely and online and still stay effective. And that is a good thing. There are those that have realized that they are not so sure of the future. So what is happening in the NGO sector is that we need to begin to plan for a future that we are not so sure of. And that is what some organizations have done. Mine, for example, is trying to pilot an online monitoring and evaluation system, which we did not have. We had some kind of online management of information, but now we are trying to explore, just in case we are locked up again, or we are stuck in this kind of situation for the next 2 years. What can we do to continue with the project activities to ensure that the beneficiaries still have the services that they need to have, and to ensure that our partners continue to meet those who are in need? However, there are those who have not learned from this experience. What they did is locked their offices, sent their workers on leave, And now that the restrictions are reducing, they're beginning to open up and go back to business as usual. And to those, I extend a warning this morning. We cannot continue operating the way we have been operating because things have changed. There's definitely a shift, and we need to analyze and understand the trends and make sure that we are not caught in this kind of position ever again. So it's an opportunity for us to increase our adaptability and agility in order to be able to address challenges that may be coming in the future that we are not even aware of. That's my advice. I know you want me to continue, but it's critical. It's critical. We've been able to, some have adapted. There's also need for adaptive programming, meaning how do you continue with your intervention within that time frame, utilizing the resources you have to make sure that you deliver on what you promised. How can you continue to deliver on what you promised, although the context has changed? An example could be, yes, schools are closed. Is there a way that you can get teaching materials to those who desperately need them without being in the school system? What does this mean? Can you divert some of the budget lines and say, instead of the support to schools, let's pay some teachers, let's buy some bicycles, let's figure out a way of getting this material to those who need it, and not just sit and wait for schools to open, because you'd be losing a whole year. So the NGOs and nonprofits are going to have to rethink and say that I still have a target. How can I reach this target, but in a different way that was probably unclear to me when the year started? There'll be need for a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, a lot of transparency. If you have not carried out the activity, it's not good to say you haven't carried out the activity. It will call for new skills, new competencies, and lots of integrity for organizations to be able to thrive and blossom in the season that is ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelina. A need to reorient and work in a different manner. As we draw to a close, I'm going to request each one of you as our panelists to give us your parting shot in 2 minutes or less. I will begin with Oxide Priscilla. What are your last thoughts on this subject? What are you telling us now as we draw to a close? Oxide Priscilla.
Thank you so much, Apofia. As we part, one thing I would like to say for NGOs is the need to ensure we have good corporate governance. Governance that will help and build our organizations and brainstorm, not just people who say yes to us. And also somebody raised something about young people. Young people indeed are the future. Young people always want something new, something vibrant. And as NGOs, let's find a way how to incorporate them and tap into that vibrancy, but at the same time building and empowering them so that they know what to do. An appeal to government concerning ensuring internet in all those local areas in our communities. Perhaps we also need to get a waiver on OTT tax so that the poor people in the local communities can be able to afford having good networks. There is a need also with NGOs to see how we include people with disabilities. That is something we have not too much dwelt on, but the messages that were going out for COVID, they need also to be tailored, well tailored to people with disabilities. NGOs, we need to move into having community-based solutions also, not just a top-down approach, but using the community, having community volunteers who can help us in our work, even to ensure sustainability depending only from donors from the West. And we need to quickly work out a system of raising local funds, either through creating social enterprises where we get money, or even raising members where we can get money, and also being able to put in place good accountability of the funds that we receive, so that even the local people can feel comfortable giving to us, knowing that there is a benefit. We need to ensure that they get a benefit, and being more accountable as NGOs. We need to put in place disaster contingency plans, because this is the first disaster. We don't know, there may be other disasters, but we need to make sure as a local NGOs that we can be able to continue our work, because we have looked ahead and anticipated disasters can come. And when they come, what are we going to do? How can we continue ensuring value for money that we get? Are we only going to stay paying salaries, but the work on the ground is not taking place? We need to ensure value for money for all that we are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Oxide Priscilla. There are other comments coming in, but we've run out of time. Ernest is talking about accountability. I will just read the comments, then we will move on, continue with our closing remarks. He's saying, removing faith-based organizations from the ambit of the NGO Act/Bureau left them largely unregulated. Regarding issue of accountability, truth be told, very few NGOs account to the persons that give them funds. An example is churches. How many churches account for the offertory collected to their congregation, especially the independent churches? Thank you very much for your comments, Ernest. I'll now call upon John Osapiri. What is your parting shot to the forum? John.
Thank you. First of all, I would even say that state control of religious institutions is not necessary. However, religious institutions should build very strong denominational leading institutions that pastors or religious leaders can actually account to those institutions, but also people should ask for accountability from religious leaders, especially in terms of accountability. To end the discussion, one, I want to encourage us to work collaboratively as a team. Let's consult with other organizations. Let's fast track good practices from other organizations. We can learn from what others are doing, and then we can also even do it better if we are able to get to know what others are doing. Of course, also I would encourage institutions to have a self-sustaining strategy. If you don't have one, please develop to cater for long-term and short-term sustainability for the organization. And then finally, it is proper that institutions should have guidelines to control the spread of COVID-19 even among their staff, because COVID-19 is still a threat, especially to Uganda, and a threat to the whole world. So we shouldn't take it for granted. Let us protect the people around us. Let us protect our staff members. And if possible, let us work remotely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Now I call Oxide Angelina. What do you want us to take away in 1 minute?
In just, thank you, Oxide Apofia. In just 1 minute, I think for me, it's just to encourage non-governmental organizations and non-profits to seriously rethink and reevaluate this season. Like the panelist Priscilla Mirembe-Seruka said, we do not know what is coming ahead. So we must make sure that we have robust systems that can stay afloat in the midst of another challenge. And also stay compliant It's easier to fight when you're in the ring. It's difficult to fight when you're not in the ring. So look at your compliance. You have time to look at your compliance. You can complain after your name is on the register, on the National NGO register. You will not be able to complain when you've been kicked out. So compliance and the need for a mindset shift. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oxide Angelina. Thank you very much, our panelists and our participants. On behalf of CASO Think Tank, I would like to greatly appreciate our panelists for that day. You will agree with me that they have done an awesome job tackling this topic. Oxide, Priscilla Mirembe Seruka from Kairos Consult, Mr. John Osapiri, CEO, Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity, Mrs. Jacqueline Asimwe, CEO of Civisos Africa, and Oxide Angelina Chinomjuni from Eric's Development Partner. We thank you and appreciate your time. It has been a privilege to host you, our dear participants. We are very appreciative of your time, and we hope we will continue this engagement even off this platform. The next webinar that we will hold this coming Saturday is about opportunities to thrive in political organizations of Uganda. We hope to be with you here again come Saturday, 21st November at 9 a.m. to be part of that discussion. I am Apofia Mhimbura, and it has been a great honor to be your moderator for this morning. And thank you for the great and rewarding time that we have had together. I now welcome Oxide Isaac to close us out in prayer. Over to you, Isaac, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Apofia. Let's humble ourselves. Lord, we thank you that the webinar has been successful. We pray that all the ideas that have been shared will be captured and that they will go a long way in informing NGOs and non-profit organizations processes and activities in this country. We thank you, O Lord, for the panelists who have been available, who have shared their knowledge and their wisdom. We pray that you bless them. We thank you for those that have been in attendance. We ask that, Lord, you bless them as well. As we depart, Lord, would you keep us under your precious blood? In Jesus' name I've prayed. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Isaac. And all of you have a lovely and blessed weekend. See you next Saturday, and bye-bye.